Meteorologist Zach Fradella here with you on this Labor Day Monday. Hopefully you enjoyed a long holiday weekend and got some rest, I guess you should say. Enjoyed your last holiday of technically summer, but hopefully you wouldn't. I was hoping that you wouldn't have to see my face anytime soon, but unfortunately, yeah, it's the peak of hurricane season. This time of year, these storms come one after another, and we're already tracking our next big hurricane. We got through the Harvey fiasco. Um, Thankfully, most of Louisiana was unscathed with the worst of that weather, but unfortunately, at least the western part of the state did have some impacts, but it looked like, most of the worst of the weather did stay in southeast Texas with Harvey. But here's the latest satellite picture. You can see sun is setting across the nation. It's set across all of the Atlantic. And there's a couple features I want to point out. It's not just Irma that we're talking about right now. We have a couple of things that are going on. Here is obviously Irma. That's pretty obvious where Irma is in this picture. We also have an area that we're disturbed weather in the southwestern Gulf. We talked about this last week. This could develop, but again, this is not something we have to worry about along the Gulf Coast. Anything that does develop here is probably just going to kind of meander and then eventually head south into Mexico, because I'm sure you've heard that we have a cold front coming to us, and that cold front is going to be a powerful one. But honestly, everybody keeps saying, oh, this cold front's coming, it's going to take the storm and get it out of here. The cold front's actually going to miss Irma. The first cold front will miss Irma, but a secondary trough, and I'm going to show you all of that in just one second, a secondary trough might be the kicker that's going to allow Irma, say, to get on out of here and turn north. But unfortunately, it does look like Irma is going to have some impact on the United States. And Irma is not going to be a weak storm. This is not going to be a storm that's going to be a Category 1. This is going to be something like a Category 4, maybe even making a run at Category 5. But I'm feeling confident here in Louisiana, Texas. This is not a Texas or Louisiana storm. From everything I'm looking at right now, I do not see this becoming a Louisiana storm. This should be nothing we have to worry about. Do we have to monitor? Of course, but I'm feeling very confident that this storm will stay at least just off to our east. It's not going to come this far west. There's that area of disturbed weather across the southwestern Gulf. Does have a good chance of becoming the next named storm, which would be Jose, but then there's also this other area of disturbed weather out in the Atlantic. That might become Jose. They're kind of racing to which one becomes Jose first. It's going to be very active. Get ready. We're going to have multiple named storms at the same time, but right now, nothing leads me to believe that any of these storms are going to impact the Gulf Coast, the northern Gulf Coast. Irma is going to be the closest, and Irma is going to be the most intense, and that's why we're going to focus on Irma right now. Look at this storm tonight. Already a Category 4 storm, 130 miles per hour, and the outflow is just symmetric. When you see a storm that is a perfect circle like this, you know it is a very intense hurricane already. And I think this storm's about to go through another intensification phase. So what does that mean? Well, it means, unfortunately, for the northern Leeward Islands, I want to point out these guys right here. All of these, the northern Leeward Islands right there. The storm is making a beeline for them. The U.S. Virgin Islands, and then Puerto Rico is right here. Okay, so we're hoping to nudge the storm just a little bit north of these islands, that they do not take a direct impact from Irma, but it's going to be a very close call for them, unfortunately. This is going to be something that they're in for a long day tomorrow and a long night tomorrow night into Wednesday, all of these islands out there. Let me show you the latest from the reconnaissance aircraft. Hurricane Hunter's in there right now, and every little dot showing you the latest pressure. Notice it was at 944, then it went to 945, basically 1 millibar. It's actually going up, so it's not deepening. If it was strengthening, that pressure would be dropping. It's been going through this eye wall replacement cycle, which is a fancy weather term of basically saying that, the eye walls, they can't sustain themselves continuously all the time. They got to replace themselves. And that allows the hurricane to sort of level off in intensity and not strengthen any. It is moving due west at this time, though. That is one thing it is doing. It is moving due west. So we're hoping that the southward movement has stopped, and it's going to start to gain just a little bit of latitude. But notice the pressure. Not dropping, so it's not strengthening now, but I'm mighty afraid that late tonight it's going to get through this eye wall replacement cycle, and when that happens, we're probably going to see it strengthen as it approaches the Leeward Islands. Notice this is 2 a.m. Wednesday, so tomorrow night, that is when it's approaching the northeastern Leewards, and then Wednesday afternoon approaching Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands. That is the first land areas that have potential impacts from a significant storm. Again, it's already at 130 miles per hour. Think if I'm sitting here saying, hey, well, it's 140 miles per hour. Think if I'm saying, if this thing could strengthen more, we easily could be talking 150, maybe even 160, which would eventually get up into that Category 5 range. There is nothing to stop this thing from strengthening, and honestly, The warmest waters in all of the Atlantic Basin sit ahead of it in the Bahamas. That is some of the warmest waters, and there is nothing that we believe will stop strengthening once it gets to that point. This is the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. This is a clear cut. We are not worried about this thing venturing off anywhere other than just north of the Big Islands. We hope, it can just interact with the Big Islands to knock the intensity down a little bit. But the only thing is, you're wishing this on the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and if any storm ever gets into those big islands, yes, they weaken considerably, but they produce significant loss of life in these areas because most of these areas are poor country areas and they have a lot of mountains. There's mudslides, so we don't want to wish the storm on anyone. We just hope it can knock down some intensity of the storm, maybe just passing close enough to the island, brushing it to knock it down a little bit. But I can tell you, most of the models are keeping this thing a very intense storm, either Category 5, Category 4, Category 5, as it moves through the Bahamas, and then eventually, in about 5 days, somewhere right on the coast of Cuba. Then what happens? Well, let me put on the latest track models. This is the latest spaghetti plots. And they're hard. They're in very good agreement. For being this far out, these things are in very good agreement that this is going to make this sharp right turn. Once it gets, off the northern coast of Cuba, it's going to make the sharp right turn, unfortunately, right into the state of Florida. This could, go right up the spine of Florida. But again, this is 6 days out. It could go a little left. It could go a little right. The Eastern Gulf is still in play, and also, missing Florida just to the right, and then eventually maybe riding up into the Carolinas. That is still an option. But I mentioned before, I'm confident. Most of the models, the ensemble runs, which is basically the model running hundreds of these models, they all say the same thing, where it's going to either stay in the Eastern Gulf, over Florida, or just off the East Coast. One of those three options is going to probably play out. Yes, we could see significant changes because we are still 6 to 7 days, but I'm confident that this storm cannot get it this far west to New Orleans or to Louisiana or to Lake Charles or to Houston. I'm feeling very confident that we will not have to deal with this storm. This is not a northern Gulf Coast or northwestern Gulf Coast storm, and here's why. Let me show you how it's going to play out. This is the GFS model, the latest run, 18Z. Let me scoot this over just so you're a little bit more centered on my screen here. Notice this huge trough. This is the front that's coming down Wednesday into Thursday. You want fall weather, you're about to get it, and it's going to be a wonderful thing. That is for sure. We're definitely looking forward to that. But as I put this into motion, that big trough digs down. Okay, this is going into, this is Thursday morning. We have the front swept through, the dry air is coming in, the good feel air. It's going to be a wonderful feel outside. But the storm is too far south to get influenced right now. The high pressure is still to its north. You notice how the high pressure is still here, okay? And with that high pressure being right here, it's still steering the storm west. The trough is actually already lifting out. Watch as I put this into motion again. The trough is going to start to scoot back into the northeast and leave. Okay, and the high pressure is going to keep building in. That's why the storm misses that first front. That cold front that's bringing us the air later this week, that cool air, that's actually going to bypass the storm. It's moving so fast that it's going to be up and out of here, and the storm is going to continue off to the west to west-northwest. Now watch what happens as we get into next weekend. We have this little bitty trough that's going to develop. We have high pressure still in control, okay, and that's what keeps pushing the storm westward. It's to a position just south of the state of Florida. Okay, so it's going to continue off to the west, but there's a kicker here. See this little yellow area right here? This is a little upper low. This is vorticity in the atmosphere. Watch how this is going to dive down, and just that little bit of diving. Notice we have a high here too. Okay, so that upper low is going to drive south. As it does so, there's a weakness. There's a weakness in between the highs. The hurricanes want to go to that weakness. They go around areas of high pressure. They don't go right into them. They go around them. So I'm then going to put this into motion and watch how this plays out. That upper low starts to drive south straight into Louisiana, and that almost slingshots the storm right up the Florida Peninsula. Again, it could go a little bit left of all of this mess. It could go a little bit left, more so into the Eastern Gulf, or it could go a little bit more right. But the cone is right there, and it would take a considerable change in these models to see a drastic shift, say, all the way into the Central Gulf. I've seen it happen before. It can happen, but I'm very confident right now that this storm cannot make it, say, past someplace like the Mississippi-Alabama line. I think these locations are pretty safe. Not set in stone, still 6, 7, 8 days away, but I'm feeling good that this storm can't make it that far west. Now, if this little upper low doesn't materialize, which, hey, it's happened before. If this upper low doesn't happen, the models are too strong with it right now, then we could see those fluctuations. But right now, I'm confident that that upper low is going to be strong enough, and we're not going to see, say, a big drastic shift in the track right now. It does not look likely that we'll see anything drastic, that this is going to nudge this thing all the way to New Orleans, all the way to Lake Charles, all the way to Houston. We're feeling good. You know, that's where we're at right now. Do we have to continue to monitor this? Of course. This is the tropics. Things change, and you know these computer models, they run multiple times a day, and things can change a lot. We're talking 6 to 7 days, which is a long time. But right now, I do feel good that this storm will stay to our east, but this could be a huge impactful storm for the state of Florida. If you have any family and friends that way, you want to get in touch with them, give them a heads up now. Tell them, hey, go to the store, beat the rush, because it's coming. And this could be a significant, you know, potentially catastrophic storm. If it's a Category 4 or Category 5 when it makes landfall, that'll be the second Category 4 to make landfall in the past 3 weeks. First one in Texas and now Florida. That goes to show you how significant, you know, the storm could be, especially if it hits anywhere around Miami. That is a very populated area, just like Houston. It's one of our top cities in America. Miami's the other one. You know, Miami's a huge city, and so all we can do for our residents of Florida is be there for them, just like we've been there for the residents in, you know, Texas. That this could become a very significant storm for our friends off to the east. But right now, I feel good where we stand here in Louisiana for this storm. Not going to be a Louisiana storm, we hope, and we hope that doesn't change. I'm meteorologist Zach Carrillo with your Monday night update. I'll continue to update throughout the week because it's going to be a long week of tracking this thing. But tonight, we're feeling good if we're on the western side or the central side of the Gulf of Mexico. Have a great night.